president-elect on why he could not have been lured into perverted sexual acts in Russia.
I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me.
Trump explains why he could not be blackmailed by Putin and why Putin may regret meddling in the election to try to help Trump win. Plus, we have big news from the cabinet hearings to Trump's pending Supreme Court pick to surprises at the VA. This is Money, Power, and Politics.
And what a wild night in politics, Marissa. Where do we start? We'll start with Trump saying that conflict of interest laws do not apply to him. He will not give up his company while running the country. Instead, he'll try to or plan to isolate himself from it. Meanwhile, the head of the nonpartisan Office of Government Ethics said his plan to do that is meaningless.
He also clashed with reporters, made fun of his critics, and called for better relations with Russia while admitting Russia interfered with our election.
And he also once again refused to release his tax returns.
Well, I'm not releasing the tax returns because, as you know, they're under audit. Oh, gee, I've never heard that. Oh, gee, I've never heard that. I've never heard that before. You know, the only one that cares about my tax returns are the reporters. Okay, they're the only ones. But no, I don't think so. I won. I mean, I became president. No, I don't think they care at all.
This news conference was vintage Donald Trump, from bashing the national news media in front of the national news media to ripping Lindsey Graham as if he was roasting him on stage.
Lindsey Graham. I've been competing with him for a long time, and he's going to crack that 1% barrier one day.
He also took a page from the campaign by throwing some digs at Hillary Clinton.
I won't be given a little reset button like Hillary. Here, press this piece of plastic. Guy looked at her like, what is she doing?
And, as he did on the campaign trail, he trashed news organizations he does not like, and in this case, refused to take a question from CNN.
Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
Attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
He also hammered the intelligence community for briefing him on possible dirt that Russia may have on him, and he said there is nothing to it, though Trump used stronger words.
And I think it's a disgrace that information would be let out. I saw the information. I read the information outside of that meeting. It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen. And it was gotten by opponents of ours. It was a group of opponents that got together, sick people, and they put that crap together.
Okay, this is pretty revealing. We now know how this all went down. We start with Trump's opponents in the campaign trail doing opposition research, claiming that Russia had dirt on Donald Trump. Then our nation's spy chiefs could not confirm it, but they decided to warn Trump about this nonetheless. And then BuzzFeed and CNN runs with this. That all makes Trump very, very angry.
Now, the thing about all of this is that we don't know exactly what kind of potential dirt the intelligence community took an interest in. Trump shot down speculation that he was caught in some kind of compromising position. He said he could not have been because he knows rooms in Russia are bugged and he wouldn't do anything embarrassing.
He also stressed that he has no business dealings directly that relate to the Russian government, and he made some news by finally agreeing publicly that Russia did in fact meddle in our election to try to help him win.
As far as hacking, I think it was Russia. If Putin likes Donald Trump, I consider that an asset, not a liability, because we have a horrible relationship with Russia. Russia can help us fight ISIS, which, by the way, is number one tricky. I mean, if you look, this administration created ISIS by leaving at the wrong time. The void was created, ISIS was formed. If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability. Now, I don't know that I'm going to get along with Vladimir Putin. I hope I do, but there's a good chance I won't. And if I don't, do you honestly believe that Hillary would be tougher on Putin than me? Does anybody in this room really believe that? Give me a break.
And so in that point, Trump is saying there's no way that Vladimir Putin can blackmail him because when he went to Russia, he knew full well that he was being watched and would not do anything scandalous or stupid. And so there you have it.
But Trump is also facing questions about his campaign. While Russia ran a covert operation to help Trump, reports claim Trump's own campaign coordinated and communicated with Russia. Trump did not address those claims directly, but he more broadly said he has no conflicts of interest as it relates to Russia.
Now, that's a long way from finished. He also said he has no conflicts of interest with his business dealings because the conflict of interest laws do not apply to the President of the United States. But in the interest of what he thinks is best for the country, he said he'll isolate himself from his business. His attorney said this too, and let his two oldest sons run it in his stead.
I understand. They don't want presidents getting tangled up in minutia. They want a president to run the country. So I could actually run my business. I could actually run my business and run government at the same time. I don't like the way that looks, but I would be able to do that if I wanted to. I'd be the only one that would be able to do that. You can't do that in any other capacity. But as a president, I could run the Trump Organization, great company, and I could run the country. I do a very good job, but I don't want to do that.
And also, Trump making big news today on policy. He said, he wants to start walling off Mexico now. We'll commit U.S. tax dollars to doing it. Then we'll deal with trying to get Mexico to pay us back sometime later.
He also said he wants to hold off on repealing Obamacare until they're ready to replace it with something else. He said his new Secretary of Health will submit a replacement plan shortly after he is confirmed.
It'll be repeal and replace. It will be essentially simultaneously. It will be various segments, you understand, but will most likely be on the same day or the same week, but probably the same day, could be the same hour. So we're going to do repeal and replace, very complicated stuff. And we're going to get a health bill passed. We're going to get health care taken care of in this country. You have deductibles that are so high that after people go broke paying their premiums, which are going through the roof, the health care can't even be used by them because the deductibles are so high.
And we have a bit of a surprise at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Trump picked David Shulkin to run the VA, and he should sail through his confirmation hearing, we think.
Yeah, Trump is promoting from within. Right now, Shulkin is the undersecretary at Veterans Affairs. He'd be the only holdover from the Obama administration. He would also be the only VA secretary to not serve in the military.
Meanwhile, Rex Tillerson took some tough questions in his confirmation hearing today. It was a little rocky at points. That's his pick to run the State Department. He has Tillerson taken heat for his ties to Putin and the nation of Russia because as an oil executive, Rex Tillerson had some business dealings with Russia and received the Russian Order of Friendship from Putin himself.
And so Tillerson clashed with Florida Senator Marco Rubio. He asked Tillerson some pointed questions about Putin meddling in our election and pressed Tillerson on Russia's actions in Syria.
Let me ask you this question. Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I would not use that term.
And what's publicly in the record about what's happened in Aleppo and the Russian military, you are still not prepared to say that Vladimir Putin and his military have violated the rules of war and have conducted war crimes in Aleppo.
Now, those are very, very serious charges to make, and I would want to have much more information before reaching a conclusion. I understand there is a body of record in the public domain. I'm sure there's a body of record in the classified domain. And I think in order to deal with a serious question like this,
Mr. Tillerson, what's happened in Aleppo is in the public domain. The videos and the pictures are there.
Fully informed before advising the president.
So from serious to very silly, here is a picture from in Washington, D.C. Here is the show outside of the show. Protesters showing up in full dinosaur costumes, a play on words in reference to Rex Tillerson's name. Those are T-Rex costumes.
Fascinating day today. Tillerson also took some hits for his business ties to Putin and Russia. We showed you that, but he took some hard swings at Russia along the way. Tillerson said Russia is in fact a danger to our country. He supports the use of sanctions against Russia and said Putin's invasion of Ukraine was illegal and that we should have responded more forcefully than we did.
And coming up, who would leak that intelligence report on Trump?
Well, Trump's response was a game changer on that, and we're going to bring in Adam Goodman to show us why. So in a bit of a pattern, you have President-elect Trump slamming the news media and even refusing to answer a question from CNN.
And those unconfirmed reports are said to include damaging information about the president-elect. He says it's, quote, phony stuff, and that he's much too smart to do anything that stupid while out of the country. He knows there's a chance that someone's watching him.
I told many people, be careful, because you don't want to see yourself on television. Cameras all over the place. And again, not just Russia, all over. Does anyone really believe that story? I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me.
And on that note, let's bring in Adam Goodman, Republican strategist. Thank you once again for joining us. Okay, so the president-elect says that these phony baloney claims came from opposition research. You delve into the world of opposition research. Tell us what that's all about, how this was developed, and how it came into play today.
Well, there's a difference in opposition research and a political campaign, where someone can make an allegation, a claim, it could even be in print somewhere, and you can roll with that. It may be enough evidence to at least get it into conversation. But opposition research, when it deals with the nation's well-being, is different. You really need to have that validated. And what we're hearing right now on the Russian intel front is these are claims that have been made, but not validated. That's where the president-elect really took exception, not just the BuzzFeed, but by extension, one of the networks today. And I think he's got a good point.
And why would the intelligence community therefore feel the need to tell him, we've got these claims, we can't substantiate it, but just thought you ought to know there are these scandalous claims about you?
Well, the fact that it leaked out is the thing that I think most concerns people, Craig. I mean, right after the meeting, it suddenly seemed to become public knowledge. That's what irked the president-elect. And I think, you know, he said, in a way, they're selling out the interests of the country when you start
who's to say it was them? How do you know it wasn't his own
inner
circle?
We don't know. And that's where the story will start to unfold. I think we all agree. We want to look into the allegations. We all agree, wherever that takes us, and with the proper authorities. But it's when media and press sometimes gets ahead of the curve and tries to deduce what the bottom line will be. That's where I think we're going to have a new sheriff in town, where he's going to call him for jumping the gun unfairly before we really know what happened.
And not just calling them out, but calling them out directly on Twitter by speaking to them directly. And that's something that we've talked about, but I don't think that this is something that we're going to see stop as he transitions into the presidency.
There's not one Twitter feed that coming from the President of the United States that mainstream media is not going to look at every word, every time it comes out. And just as, Marissa, they've been calling out, the President-elect's been calling out the media for being more truthful and to do a more thorough job, in his opinion. He's also kind of setting lines that will not be crossed as long as he's President of the United States. One of them he's sent really to corporate America. As much as he's praised the companies that have made the moves to keep jobs in America, he also made it very clear. He said the word's out to every CEO in America that we're going to take a look at how much you're doing for America and investing in America as much as you're investing in your bottom line.
I think one of the most interesting things that I found from today's press conference was the fact that he brought in his lawyer to talk about his business dealings. What point was he trying to drive home with that? We
haven't had this kind of situation. You have to go back to Nelson Rockefeller to have someone of this kind of wealth and success in the business world in a public position. I thought that was a tremendous job that was done by his legal team, frankly, in doing everything they could to reassure the American public that there be no conflicts of interest. A lot of vetting, having an ethics advisor that would be necessary to approve any major deals coming from the Trump organization, and of course, complete hands-off. I thought that was really, actually, frankly, reassuring in very, very unknown territory for our president-elect.
You said, among other things, that you like to keep your finger on the pulse of the people. Trump said the people don't care about his tax returns. Is he right?
I think we were so consumed with the emails from Secretary Clinton. It became a definition, unfortunately, I think, for her campaign. I think it hurt her. I think Donald Trump is signaling we're not going to spend a lot of time messing around with stuff like that. Look, I put out what I think I need to put out. You know, I've got dealings all over the world. It's very, very complex. I think the American people know what they need to know. What they want, though, is they want a government that is working and functioning better and with a sense of, a strength and leadership more than ever. And I think that is what he's trying to tell the media, and that's what he's reassuring the public with.
Adam, thank you for your time.
It's going to be a hell of a show.
It is. All right, coming up, we're going to show you how the inauguration will play out next week, and we have some changes to talk about because, once again, the president-elect is breaking from tradition. Okay, 1 week from Friday, President-elect Trump's inauguration day, he will become President Trump.
Yep, Mr. Trump is breaking away from tradition. Charles Brotman, who has announced the inauguration parade since 1957, will not be the man at the mic this year. Fox's Kathleen Cairns talks with Steve Ray, who will take over inauguration duties.
January 20th, a historic handoff with a transition of power in Washington, D.C. But some things will remain the same, like the inauguration parade will travel down Pennsylvania Avenue just as it has for decades.
I was here at the Nixon inauguration as a kid in 1969.
But Steve Ray will not be watching from the sidewalk this year.
I am the president's announcer, who will be at the Lafayette Park reviewing stand right across from the presidential reviewing stand, where the first family will be to enjoy the parade as it goes by.
It's a coveted position.
You're going to have a constant flow of entertainment and military units and high school bands and college bands.
Ray says this will be a personal lifetime achievement, no matter who is being honored.
I would have said the exact same thing, whether Mr. Sanders had won, whether Mrs. Clinton had won, no matter who won. This was one of those things that I had targeted as a bucket list item for my career a long time ago.
The parade will last about 2 hours.
If you want to get the best view of the parade coming down Pennsylvania Avenue, then many people recommend getting here as early as 5 a.m. on Inauguration Day.
They start at the Capitol.
But Ray says there will be one very crucial moment for him at the start.
Well, the job is to announce the president, the first lady, and the first family. So the very first time I happen to say, ladies and gentlemen, the 45th president of the United States, and then that name is going to be the very first time I actually say it, because that's history, and I'm not going to give it away before we get there.
And coming up, President Obama ran on hope, but as he leaves office with unfinished business and a warning to the people.
Okay, looking back at President Obama's speech from last night and his legacy over the last 8 years, I think he did a fantastic job of connecting with his base. But again, by his own admission, he leaves a good deal of unfinished business. And that's what struck me a great deal when he delivered his farewell. He ran on hope, on taking a divided nation, bringing it together. No red states, no blue states for the United States. By his own thoughts and words, he did not deliver on that, and he regards it as his biggest failure at a time when a new president-elect is heading into the White House, upside down in his approval ratings, at least as it relates to the transition, and a nation greatly divided. And
I think his message last night was really geared towards bringing the country back together. We're divided right now, but let's do our best and let's become that one nation under God, like our Constitution says. I think that was the theme of his speech. You know, he went through all of his ups and downs of the presidency, but really the message was togetherness.
Good insight. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you for watching us. We will see you again tomorrow night for more Money, Power, Politics.